Yo, welcome back everybody. Today we have not gameplay. That's it. We're not starting this one the same way we start every other video. It's not gameplay from here. Instead, we have the announcement of the next upcoming patch, which let's just say is substantial. We're going to have a major overhaul of multiple mechanics in the game, including poisonous going away. No more Mega Wind Fury, and changes to a ridiculous number of minions. Basically, every tribe is being redesigned to the extent that it's not going to win the game in the ways that we typically won the game before. No more APM pirates, no more poisonous Murlocs, no more blah, 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 blah. We got to dive deep down into this to get to all of the in-depth changes. But I'm going to try to do my best to quickly, and I mean this in quickly for Bofur sense, go through these notes in a way that we can cover as much as possible, but it is just a bird's eye view approach to the patch. There are hundreds of patch notes here. All right, let's go quick. First of all, we got a new hero, Rockmaster Voone, who for some reason they don't have the text of this hero power up here, so you got to read the tiny print. At the end of every 3 turns, get a plain copy of the leftmost card in your hand. This is a common theme amongst the newer heroes. We got this every so often number of turns. Do some effect. It's this upbeat mechanic, as they're calling it down here. Generally speaking, I'm not entirely sure that this is going to be worthwhile. The ability to pick up a minion right before this thing procs, keep it in hand, and generate an extra copy is a decent tempo swing in the middle of the game. You're basically saying, oh, turn 3, just don't play one of your minions. Now you have 2 copies of that minion. But is that worth a whole hero power? To be determined. We'll figure that one out. New upbeat minions, we'll go through these more in depth once we get into the tribes that they belong to. But a new tier 1 dragon generates a free dragon for you of your tier or below every 3 turns, at the cost of being one of the lowest tempo minions in the game. A 2/1 body on Tavern 1 basically loses or ties to absolutely everything, but you get a free minion on turn 4. If you buy this thing a little later in the game, obviously it's going to be delayed, but value at the expense of health is always something that we can consider. Remember, we are getting outside of this buddy meta. Buddy meta being a time period where tempo mattered a lot. We're going to go back to the time of greed, of playing toward later game minions, of power leveling, of all of those kind of things that become viable options when you don't have to rush down wins to get that buddy. So greeding a minion to give you an extra minion in the mid game oftentimes is going to be worthwhile. Pirates get a key point in their tribe as well. That is this type of new upbeat mechanic. Instead of Greta, who is now gone from the game, we now have Upbeat Impressionist. At the end of every 2 turns, make a random pirate in your hand golden. So basically, keep a pirate in your hand every other turn. Turn it golden, and you can play into those minions. Question is new pirates worth playing? Keywords updates, poisonous, gone. Venomous takes its place, so it's not really truly gone. Venomous is basically single application poison. The first minion that is damaged by a venomous minion is instantly destroyed. Now, the way that is written, I would assume that means if it bumps a Divine Shield, it doesn't count as the proc. This thing can hit one thing, dealing damage to its body, will poison it, kill it instantly, and then it loses its venomous tag. That doesn't mean the minion dies instantly. It's not like it has to be like Leroy where it dies and then to kill the minion. And then it can survive. Say, for example, if it hits a 6 health or 6 attack minion, this could stay alive as a 2/1, but it won't have the card text. And then it means it does 2 damage next time it attacks something. So you can't just stack high health on a bunch of poison minions, and then that's a game-winning strat. Additionally, venomous things only trigger once, like Reborn, like Divine Shield. So there is a pretty good precedent that's here to potentially think that you can reapply Venomous to a minion in the middle of the game. If it uses the Venomous proc, doesn't die, and then the condition to apply Venomous to something, like say, for example, reborning this Undead, will come back with a Venomous. Or say, for example, there are certain other ones, like Puffer Quill has been redesigned to Venomous, that if you were able to play a Blood Gem on it in the middle of combat, it could deal damage to something, then regain its poison effect or venomous effect, and then attack again. So scary moments here when we go flashbacks to like Reborn My Exna days with Reborn Undead here, but at least it isn't like a castable Reborn effect like Beasts used to have to make a 2-for-1 type of minion mid game. We shall see. Poison does have to exist in this game in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, the game gets really, really, really stat heavy. and then there leaves very little counterplay. So it's a different form, different way of dealing with killing minions in one hit. We'll see how it plays out. Also, they made a note here that Mega Wind Fury is now removed from the game. If you triple Wind Fury minion, it's just a Wind Fury minion. No more Mega Wind Fury. All right, well, I'm going to go through the tribes here in a second. Every single tribe gets a huge bunch of minion changes. We'll walk through these one by one as quickly as possible, kind of glossing over the old stuff and talking about the new stuff. But on top of everything else, ladder resets this patch. The Battlegrounds track refreshes for seasonal rewards, lists all of them on the website. Link for this entire thing, by the way, is in the description below the video. We got tour dates. Oh my god, noted things that are upcoming. A bunch of dev talks, which I'm really excited about. I always love to hear the insight of the developers on why they do different things. They have 5 dev talks scheduled that will go over specifics of what they're doing, why they're doing it, talk about different key facets and whatnot. Pay attention to that stuff coming out in the next few days. One on the 3rd, one on the 9th, 11th, 15th, and 22nd. Now, something else to note here is that the patch goes live on the 9th, which is a week from today. And that patch only includes Beast, Murloc, Dragons, Elementals, Naga, and Undead. The other 4 tribes will be systematically added to the game over the course of the next about 2 weeks after that point. So we get a core group at the beginning, and then we get a trickle in of some of the new stuff to keep the game fresh for a little bit. Personally, I would have liked it all just to be thrown in day one. Let us drown in all of the new resources, but I respect it. First, the little stuff, the new stuff, a healthy portion, and then add some extra spice over time. Last but not least, the Battlegrounds preview event is coming on the 4th. That is on the Thursday of this week. And I will be taking part in that. So if you guys are around on Twitch at this time, Pacific time, that is effectively when my YouTube video goes live, by the way. We will be playing with all of the new tribes, the day one tribes, as a kind of like promotional event. Bunch of content creators and streamers and whatnot doing some preview stuff. Also, Twitch drops, if you're a Twitch viewer, will be enabled on the upcoming week in order to get this nice new Murloc skin. Without any further ado, we go into the minions. We have 10 tribes, guys. 10 tribes with a ridiculous amount of changes coming for them. So I will do my best to make this as short as possible. 59 minions being removed, 58 new minions, a bunch of changes to minions. I'm going to miss a bunch of things. If you see something I missed or something you want to discuss, feel free to leave that comment below. I will get to them. But without any further ado, hey look, beasts! New minions. We're just going to kind of gloss over the old ones. Hyena's the same. Mana Saber, new minion. Death Rattle, 1-star, 4/1. Summon 2 0/1 couplings with taunt. The synergy for this obviously doesn't seem very good on turn 1. But with other minions being able to buff things when they spawn, think of Mama Bear, think of cards like in the future, we're going to see this pretty quickly, that we got Pale Scale back, and a few others. Maybe we'll go slightly out on this zoom so it's a little more visible on the screen. We start seeing that, buff things that die type of Death Rattle. Also a really interesting card when it comes to Leapfrogger. A lot of enabling factors for Leapfrogger this patch are being introduced. And Leapfrogger, remember, was already a pretty good comp prior to buddies being added to the game. We've had a little reprieve from Leapfroggers being an OP board state during buddy meta, because buddy meta is just a little bit too fast and you don't have enough time to go search for all those barons and such. We're going to slow down the game a little. We're going to have non-buddies as of next Tuesday. And we get stealth for Baron, cough cough. I know we haven't talked about that yet, but there's now a way that we can stealth Baron, and when you can stealth Baron, Leapfroggers gets very out of hand very quickly. So Mana Saber being another enabling method of getting taunts on the board for Leapfrogger. It's also going to make it pretty good. Hummingbird. Your other beasts have +2 attack. 2-star 0/3. Aside from being adorable, this card seems a little lackluster. We will see in implementation. Rylek Metalhead. 3-star 3/4. Taunt, Death Rattle. Trigger the battle cries of adjacent minions. This thing is actually really good. The idea that you can play multiple minions on the board that generate permanent value when this minion dies, just think about having like Shell Collector. Just like a 1-star generate a coin on the board still when you get this. you can just generate extra coins in combat for a minion that you're going to buy up anyway. Then obviously you can play more synergies come later in the game. But anything that pays itself back really quickly, whether it's extra stats, extra blood gems, extra gold, whatever it is, super, super, super nice. Banana Slamma. 3-star 2/5 after you summon a beast in combat, double its stats. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is like, think about Mama Bear. Think about cards that are being killed repeatedly on the board to create extra big minions. So you take a spot instead of having like a second Mama Bear to make a minion that gets double buffed by Mama Bear. It effectively acts as the second Mama Bear in that scenario. God forbid you're getting golden versions of these cards and you start getting bigger and bigger death rattles. The synergy is obviously there with a tribe that's built entirely on things dying, right? Not an overly impressive card, but it's a 3-star. 3 stars shouldn't be game defining. An interesting tech card to be added in specific situations, and okay in the middle of the game if you have a couple death rattles just for tempo. Macaw, Rattler, Sly Raptor, Mama Bear, Pale Scale all stay the same. Pale Scale coming back to the game has been disabled for a while. You might remember Pale Scale back about 6 months ago when it was removed. Was one of the highest play impact cards in the game. When I say play impact, I mean the difference between playing the card and not playing the card on that turn was one of the highest changes in your placement in the game. In other words, play the card, get better rating. Don't play card, get worse rating. It's a hard metric to define, but it is the difference in performance based upon playing the card versus not playing the card. So it's just your impact in the game. And the reason why was that you stabilize the middle of the game and you almost always take top 4s in that position. But one of the downsides of playing toward Pale Scale was that you built yourself into a position that rarely got first place. Now, we have Fell Stompy Boy. Fell Stompy Boy, especially when buddies aren't in the game, is going to be an absolute house when it comes to tempo. It might just push everybody out of the lobby before they can even play the game. We're not talking about buddy meta where people ultra scale. Get mid-game tempo off Pale Scale, win rounds, find Fell Stomper, play death rattles. Game may be over before you know it. There you go. Shortest review of beasts ever. We did a patch review, by the way, on stream today. If you check the VOD for my stream, it was a 5-hour review of all these tribes. If you are interested in a longer in-depth discussion, I will link the full VOD of the review below the stream or below this video. 5 hours of discussion. You are warned. It is lengthy. We are verbose, believe it or not. Regardless, I'm not really going too heavily over the cards that were removed, but one thing to note was that Beast lost Alley Cat. It's one of the most important 1-stars to be removed from the game. We lost an economy minion on Tavern 1. That's going to affect not just Beast boards, but everybody early in the game. Also really affects Jandis, who now no longer has a swap stat or strat because Murloc Tidehunter is gone and Alley Cat is gone. And on top of that, affects the Shutterwalk can probably play Beast lobbies again. We don't have confirmation of that. And a few other tribes that really rely, or heroes that really relied upon economy early, like Malagos, like Hook Tusk, who are very reliant on making extra minions on the board. Murgles. Murgles get the same 1-stars. Tad's still in the game, but the 2-star formation or board has been redefined. No more Murloc War Leader. Instead, we have Salt Scale returned to the pool. This has been disabled for what, 4 months now? Used to have this guy. Salt Scale is a staple of Murloc builds for quite some time. And the new card, Upbeat Flutist. At the end of every 2 turns, give a random minion in your hand plus 9 health. This card's busted. This card is crazy. This card is silly. Why? Why? Why is this okay? First of all, you start to get the flavor of what Murlocs are in this meta. And Murlocs are a hand buff type of tribe. We're going to see a bunch of this stuff occurring over the course of the tribe. But the idea of building a big minion in hand that you can spawn from hand is like going to be the core mechanic of the tribe. No longer are we go wide, all poison, get Bran, play buffs, try to make board of all poison, divine shield or whatever at the end. New mechanics, new day, it's a new Murlocs. Upbeat Flutist doesn't even have to be a Murloc card. Find this card early and you will always milk this shit. This is way too much health. 9 health on a minion. Just think about like the beginning of the game. You're turn 1, you're any generic hero. You buy a minion, you level to 2, and on turn 3, you see an Upbeat Flutist. Heartbeat buy, right? You take that card, you put it on the board, you play that turn like normal. The next turn you have 6 gold, you just buy 2 minions and leave one of them in your hand. You're playing down 1 minion for 1 turn to make that 1 minion 9 health bigger. I don't care what minion it is. If it's turn 5 combat and you have a 9 health buffed minion, that's basically a 3 times sized minion at that point in the game. That's nuts. That's crazy. That's not okay. This thing is imbalanced. And the worst part is, it's not even the most imbalanced thing in this patch for Murlocs. Murloc's going to get out of hand real quick. Next, Primal Fin. Keck doubly. It's still here. But something to note here is Primal Fin's a 4-star. Cold Light Seer went back down to 3. Primal Fin's a 4-star. And why is it important that Primal Fin's a 4-star? Because I can't tell if this is supposed to be a 3 or a 4-star over here. Did they make a mistake in the placement of the card? For Scour Fin? Is it supposed to be before the Primal Fin up here as a 3-star? Or did they make the mistake on the Scour Fin down here that it's actually supposed to be a 4-star and they just gave the wrong tavern tier in its label? Because if this card is a 3-star, this game is cooked. I don't understand. I don't know. Like, the last card that I thought was this imbalanced was Boombox when they added it. This is not okay, Blizzard. This card is not balanced. This is not an appropriate level of scaling to exist on a card on Tavern 3. Just think of the very vanilla standpoint of, I go 3 on 3. I get Scour Fin. I put the other card in my hand. I then get a 5/5 buffed other minion. I lose a round in the process. Now I have a 10/10 or whatever it is. Put it on the board, buy 2 minions, leave 1 in hand. I have another 5/5 buff. The amount of tempo that you get in the middle of the game like that rivals what Lich Baz is capable of doing. Now, we did give an extreme example. We're saying, oh my god, if you get Scour Fin immediately, it's an absurd amount of power. Yeah, I get it. That's a high roll. But this card isn't going anywhere. You're just going to get multiple of these. You're just going to put them on the board. You're going to gold it. It's going to keep littering your hand with a billion stats. And it's not just, oh, it's a hand minion. It doesn't really matter that much. It buffs a Baron for later in the game. Murgles want hand buffs. Look at these cards. Bream counter. Next card over here. While this is in your hand, after you play a Murloc, gain 3/2. Make giant thing in hand. Base Gill. Death Rattle. Oh, it's a 4-star, 6/2. Death Rattle. Summon the highest health minion from your hand for this combat only. So basically, this is a 6/2 that summons that giant thing that you're buffing. It might as well just be labeled as the biggest minion in your hand. Oh, and a little body. And, I mean, God forbid, whoops, you haven't buffed a bunch of things in hand. Then just leave yourself a nice little venomous minion in your hand. Summon that with the base skill. Who cares? It's a giant minion for you, or a venomous minion for you. These kind of cards are getting out of hand, man. These are crazy. New Murlocs, new day. I get it. It's a different way to play the game, but oh my god, are they overtuned. This is not okay. This just littering your hand with more and more and more and more stats passively for absolutely zero cost is not okay. Scaling on low tavern tiers is very hard to balance. Operatic Belcher, 5-star. Venomous, Death Rattle, give a friendly Murloc venomous. So this is our pseudo Toxfin. Kind of like, well, we'll just use a Toxfin example of back in the day. The minion itself is a 2 health poison, effectively. You know, it dies on the, it loses its venom when it deals damage. And then it dies and it gives something else venom. If everything is small on the board, kind of does its job, right? Makes another small minion into a venomous minion. That's pretty cool. It's a double proc. I think this thing is going to be very similar to be used in the late game in a very similar way to how we used to use Murkai and Toxfin, that you put both of them on the board. You have a double poison as a tech pivot at the very end of the game. And it's a very useful way of just like getting out of Theotar or whatever it was back in that time to put 2 more relevant minions on the board. Having just this card on the board and any generic thing like a Begurgle behind it, this dies, then gives Venomous to Begurgle and it dies and, you know, kills something too. On the other hand, if you're playing big Murlocs, which is going to be what is the case, you have Magmalocs on the board, you got, you know, all your cyclable shit with Skyfin, with the Scour Fins, with the base skill, etc., etc. This guy dying isn't necessarily gonna buff the Murloc you want to have venomous. It's not like, oh, we have one little Murloc on the board, it's going to guarantee give that thing venom. It oftentimes will just buff your Magma Lock and you'll be like, well, thanks, game. That didn't do shit. It's just a vanilla venomous minion. A little less controllable. Kind of the trend here with the change from venomous to poisonous is it's less controllable and it's easier to counter, yet still gives an avenue to deal with big minions if you need to do so. Last but not least, our big boy, Tavern 6 Murloc, no more Seafood Slinger. Instead, we have Coral Murloc. Start of combat, gain the stats equal to all minions in your hand. You seeing the problem? Seeing the problem, chat? We can just have gigantic things that we've built the entire game. The Bream counters, the Scour Fins, the shit that's just kind of chilling in your hand. And then this thing can just be gigantic. Giant Murloc smash. And then spawn a bunch of them out of hand with the base skills. Gone are the days that we could only cycle and buff 5 Murlocs at a time with a brand. Now we can buff the 5 Murlocs at a time with a brand, and also buff the Bream counters that are sitting in your hand, and also use the Scour Fins to death rattle other things that are in your hand. Then have base skills on the board that pull a bunch of those things out. And then potentially, God, this is too hard to navigate, have gigantic Coral Murlocs as well. Alright. I went overkill on the Murlocs, I understand, but this tribe is going to be interesting when it goes live. Some of the other ones, not nearly as much. Dragons, also interesting. Upbeat Front Drake we covered before. Every 3 turns, get an extra random dragon, basically your tavern tier or below. It was brought up in our discussion today that it has to be that your tavern or below, right? Yes, it's not turn 4 Calicos, chat. No, that's not how it works. That being said, if you are a Rafam curve hero like Maiev or Rafam, Upbeat Front Drake gives you basically a coin flip to be able to generate a second copy of itself. It's going to be a very, 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 very good card if you can get it turn 1 for a hero like Maiev, because it's a very high likelihood that you generate toward triples, which is just something to keep in mind. God forbid you get a 2-star, then you'd have to take one of these cool cards like Low Flyer over here. At the end of your turn, give +2 attack to all minions with less attack than this. First glance, you just go, all right, well, I want to make this thing big attack. If I make this thing big attack, then it gradually makes everybody big attack. Tough to buff dragons on low tavern tier, right? But there are plenty of cards that do enable it. Plenty of heroes that do enable it. What about Naga being in the game? What about Vol'jin? What about playing toward, a variety of hero powers that buff individual minions? Low Flyer can be a very, very simple way to build a board full of like 10 to 12 attack minions that allow you to power level. Obviously not game winning, but a 2-star shouldn't be game winning. A good card, nonetheless. Smuggler's still here, Blazing Skyfin, Twilight Emissary, not much has changed. The one thing to note is that out of 3-star dragons, we did lose the +1 attack buffer dragon. That synergized pretty well with Smuggler. He is gone. Terragosa returns to Tavern 3. I always have to check my notes to be like, is Terragosa on 3 or 4? Keeps changing back and forth, patch after patch. Terragosa's on 3 this patch. Stormbringer, our new dragon 4-star. After a different friendly dragon gains attack, it also gains it. This also gains it. So in other words, buff other things, also buff Stormbringer. Should be very, very achievable when you think about late game dragon boards. To buff this thing to a level that is effectively poisonous. Think about what Calicos looked like in previous patches. If you're buffing everything +1/1, then Stormbringer's getting the 1/1 and also 5-6 extra attack at the same time. This thing gets out of hand very quickly. Get Nadinas for it. Build Divine Shield, gigantic attack. Kind of the tried and true dragon combo. By itself, not overly exciting, but in the middle of the game, a 7 health minion that gets decent attack is not bad. Sanctum Rester. 5-star, 5/5, start of combat, give your dragons 8 health. Before you panic. Start of combat. Start of combat. Doesn't make it a bad card, but that 8 health is not permanent. Then again, if you have 3 decent dragons on the board, a casual +24 health buff, even temporary, like an aura health buff, is nothing to laugh at. That is a lot of stats. Note that we did lose Cyborg Drake from Tavern 5, so dragons are going to feel very, very different. Less Divine Shield synergy, and much more try to get stats and scaling type of lines. A lot of these things are scaling cards. Not to mention Electric Synthesizer over here. Battlecry, give your other dragons +4 attack. Scaling dragons. Health from this guy. Health from other minions. Health from whelp smugglers. Attack from the battle cries. Attack from the scaling. Good cyclable minion for Kalecgos. A lot of attack. Obviously has some synergies with some of the other new dragons. Along with this guy, Disco Shuffler. Trigger a friendly minion's battle cry. Could also trigger this thing again, right? Or discover a Battlecry minion. Choose one of the two. So in other words, it is a random Battlecry minion discovered, one of 3, for net 1 gold, or is trigger a specific Battlecry for net 2 gold. Either way, this card is going to be almost always a good buy. It is a Gallywix enabler. It is like a lot of stuff is a Gallywix enabler. Let's be real. Gallywix needs to change this patch before it gets out of hand. It is a scaler for Kalecgos. It is a scaler for any board that looks like it has, 1 key Battlecry type minion. And there's quite a few of those, right? Generating minions off Drakaseth, Electric Synthesizer to score or to scale some things. And even if you're not playing like a fully dragon board, sometimes trigger friendly minions Battlecry is, I have Murlocs on the board. I have Bran. I kept a Primal Fin. I can find a Disco Shuffler and then I can just trigger the Primal Fin again. Like this card extends far outside of dragon synergies, is a very useful card on a variety of boards. And last but not least, the flying under the radar change. Kalecgos got a buff here in the wording of his hero power. After you trigger a battle cry, give your dragons 1/1. Not when you play a battle cry unit. Which means this triggers a battle cry. This gives the 1/1 buff from Kalecgos. If you have a brand on the board, you double trigger battle cries, which means you get a 2/2 because of the brand now. If you have brand plus discover Murlocs or whatnot, we have dual tribe minions that exist in this game to be able to play toward like Primal Fin or whatever. You get like 4 buffs off of a 6 buffs off of a single Primal Fin on a Kalecgos board with a single brand and a discoverable minion. It's crazy. That's a lot of scaling, and Kali getting faster makes dragons very scary. Dragons are really outclassed right now in buddy meta because of the power level of just the generic level and speed of the game. Removing Theotar, and then on top of that, getting rid of buddies is going to open the door again for Kalecgos to be good. And Nadina still exists. So like, big stat, make Divine Shield minions, win lobby. Same old, just new tools to do so. All right, breather for a second. We've gone through 3 out of the 10 tribes, and we are like 30 minutes into our video. It is impossible to do this very quickly. Doing it at my own rate, this couldn't be a short video. It's an hour video no matter which way you slice it. Flourishing Frostling, 2-star elemental, has 1 attack for each elemental you played this game, basically scales faster than the things that you would scale with Nomi. The card is the elemental version of Poison. When you build an elemental cycling comp, we will come back to this, or let's just view this as a minion that synergizes well with the later cards, and you will see why. But at the beginning of the game is a 2-star, pretty lackluster. Everything else stayed the same on low tavern tiers. We do not have Party Elemental, by the way, anymore. And we do not have, we don't have a lot of things, let's be real. Ball is gone. There's a couple other cards. We didn't really talk about these 60 cards that were removed because it's basically playing Where's Waldo. Every single sheet, they don't list like which cards were removed, but you just kind of have to do deductive reasoning. If the card isn't on the list, it's probably removed from the game. There you go. That's it. Dancing Barnstormer, Death Rattle, Elementals, and Bob's Tavern have +2/2 for the rest of the game. This is kind of like replacing Light Spawn, which is no longer in the game. A minion that dies that give a 2/2 passive aura bonus to the tavern. Nice card once you get ahead. Nice card to snowball even further with Nomi. Very hard card to play when you're behind in the game, though. A 4/2 body on Tavern 4 is pathetic. So you better have a way to survive. Whether if you're ahead and you have Nomi and you want to leave it on the board at the end of the turn, cool, extra scaling. Leaving this thing on the board, like tripling into this thing early in the game, tripling in the 4 and getting this, is going to be an entry point into elementals. You can take a few elementals that are buffed up, and then maintain tempo and keep that thing around and keep scaling. But it isn't a direction-giving card. Just an enabling card. Upbeat Upstart. Taunt at the end of every 2 turns. Set this minion's health to the highest in your warband. Kind of a neat concept. It's going to be a minion that's buffed up, say, hopefully with like Nomi or whatever. Maybe it's a 20/20. Every 2 turns, it updates to be the biggest minion on the board, or its health matches the biggest minion on the board. If you triple anything on that board, say a Recycling Wraith, and it becomes like a 70/70, this thing's going to catch up and become a 20/70, which helps out a little bit. In practice, feels a little lackluster. I'm not sure this thing really has a place in the game, but there'll be a niche moment where you'll be like, cool, I got to use it. That'll be about it. Gusty Trumpeter. This card gives me faith in Blizzard. This card gives me faith that they did some balancing of the hero, or the card, or the tribe, or whatever you want to say. Because it really, really, really doesn't feel like 6 elementals is your starting point when you design a card like this. After you sell 6 elementals, get another random elemental. But let's think this one through. This card is potentially stackable. You see what they're trying to do. They're trying to feed you minions that will then allow you to cycle to play things for Nomi, things for Magmalock, play extra minions that benefit from minions being played, you know, like Frostling up here. But think about how this stacks. If this thing's golden, you're talking about 2 elementals for every 6 that you play, including the 2 that you just generated. So it's just 4 more after that. Florgle is a very good infinite hero with just a single brand. Think about what like a golden trumpeter, maybe another trumpeter on the board, a brand, whatever existing. How many elementals you cycle through for how little gold, because you're generating 1 gold from each of them. They discount the elemental counter again. Tavern Tempest is an extra elemental. Celemental is an extra elemental. You can get to a place where APM elementals is going to genuinely be a playable line. A single Nomi and going infinite off of a bunch of Gusty Trumpeteers is a viable scaling line. Pair that with the new Rock. What a name for a card. And you have another different scaling method. No longer is it Nomi scale the board. It's now buff attack or buff health every turn. After you play an elemental, give all of your minions 1 attack or 1 health, swapping back and forth each turn. This is basically the Scooby-Doo meme takes off the mask of the ghost. It's just Little Rag in a different skin. Instead of the stats being all lumped onto 1 minion, it's just distributed across all minions. It isn't a great card by any means, but it is another scaling card. Scaling good, after all. Checking on my dogs. And last but not least, the absolute pinnacle of this elemental tribe. Elemental of Surprise. Divine Shield. This minion can triple with any elemental. So basically what you're going to want to do now is get yourself Nomi buff, get yourself 2 decent sized wildfires, and then finish it off with an elemental of surprise. That'll make a doubled statted wildfire elemental with Divine Shield. Repeat that over and over again with gigantic minions that you're creating, and it's not infeasible to think that your board could be a bunch of Divine Shield gigantic elementals. Now there is a cost to that. You got to assume that there aren't going to be too many of these in the pool. There's only so many 6 stars, and it's not exactly hard to make use of this even if you aren't an elemental board. So you're going to see these things being rolled into and taken out of the pool very quickly. So there's going to be a limited supply of them. Naga and Undead as well. They're just like, they're more modern tribes. They have the kind of updated style of the way Blizzard's been building tribes as of late. They got some small tweaks. They did not fundamentally change the way that they play, not nearly as much as, say, Beast or Murloc or Demon or whatever are doing. Instead, we're just getting some new tools to enable an already known method of playing the tribe. For example, 2-star Reefer. Guaranteed to be called Reefer within like 4 minutes of this patch going live. So we might as well just start, right? All right, Reefer over here. Spellcraft, give a minion stats equal to the Tavern tier until next turn. Basically, 2/2 buff if you're on 2, a 3/3 buff if you're on 3, 4/4 buff. Shoal Commander, just down a Tavern tier, and scales with Tavern tier instead of number of Naga on the board. Good card. Less awkward to use. Lower Tavern tier. Makes Lava Lurker a lot stronger of a card, because having a good Spellcraft spell down on Tavern 2 that's easily accessible, Nice little combo to scale 2/2, 3/3 per turn through the mid game. Eventually make a permanent minion in the form of the Lava Lurker. Next one, Brute. Decreased down to a 3/2, but dropped all the way down to Tavern 3. It's beautiful. Any level of mid-game spellcraft synergy and a Brute is going to be a buyable pair, because permanent scaling in the form of the extra 1/1s on top of the, temporary stats of the spellcraft spells, worthwhile to play. More copies of Brute in the pool, easy access, easier ways to duplicate spells now as well, including the next card, Zesty Shaker. 3-star 3/4 once per turn. After you cast a spellcraft spell on this, add a new copy to your hand. So it kind of acts as a duplicator. You can use your best spell on the Zesty Shaker that then creates a copy of that same spell, and you can use it on something else as well. Very, very similar to the style of the buddies of the Naga heroes, where you could duplicate spells and get extra procs off of things like Athissa, off of cards like Eventide Brute now, which is very accessible early in the game. Nice little extra scaling option existing in the game, and not as busted as Siren was, Deep Blue Crooner. Spellcraft, give a minion +1/1 until next turn. Improve your future Deep Blues. We gotta assume that the spellcraft spell is called Deep Blues. And that 1/1 probably becomes a 2/2, 3/3, 4/4 gradually over time. That's pretty slow. It's pretty weak. Unless you get a bunch of these crooners, you're probably not getting a ton of stats. But if you do find a pair, or hopefully a golden minion works in that way too, 2/2, 4/4, 8/8, 6 or 10/10. No 6s apparently. I just skipped completely over it. That scales pretty decently. And taking that mid-game power along with all of the spellcraft procs on other things at the same time, you can see how it adds up. It's still a 2/2 baseline body, and that's not that great. And it's not like you really need to build to scale that specific spell. For most Naga boards, you'd rather get higher quality minions that give permanent stats over time. So feels a little awkward, feels a little understated to me. Silent Swimmer. Nothing to see here. Totally not going to break the game. Let's just move on. Let's go over here to something else. Oh God, what did you do, Blizzard? Why is this the case? Why do you have this card? Oh look, guys. Spellcraft, give a minion stealth. That can't go wrong. And it's not even like it's a low tempo card. It's a 3/5 spell. Let's just make things that are stealth unzappable as well at the same time. Fuck it. Let's make that Baron unable to be countered by single boombox as well. No. Leapers forever. That's what it feels like. Feels like this board is just, or this card is just like, I want to make Leapers into the top tier comp that it can be. Let's just have Silent Swimmer exist in the game. We can use it as a tech card, kind of like we used to use Glowscale for just a better card for Leapfroggers comp. Hide that Baron in stealth forever. Oh my God, that's not going to be a problem. It'll be fine. Don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. Copium. And then on top of that, it's an 8/8 body. It's at minimum, just use the spell back on itself, and it's an 8/8. Look at this guy over here. It's a 3/3. 8/8. What is this balance? I give up. I ranted about this one for far too long on stream. I give up. I'm broken inside. I don't know why this was added. They really should have made it, as somebody suggested in chat. Give a minion 3/5. If it is a Naga, give it stealth as well. Like that kind of concept, so you can keep the stealth mechanic to, like, I don't know, make Pashmar unable to be sniped or whatever, or protect the key minion. Maybe hide Puffer Quill to the last minion or whatever against a big stat board. That would be kind of cool. Making it so that it is like, hey, let's just make Baron stealth for a composition that relies heavily on Baron dodging attacks. I don't love it, dude. I don't at all. And that's Naga. Everything else stays the same. Puffer Quill is now Venomous. It is kind of interesting, to be fair. Because Venomous, with cast a spell on the target, can potentially be reapplied multiple times in a combat with a few of the new mechanics in the game that cast spells over the course of a combat. Think about the Beast card that we saw at the very beginning of the patch review that casts spells or casts the battle cries of adjacent minions. Then there's also a few cards coming in later that also enable it. So potentially you can still get multiple poison hits. It's just going to be tough. Everything else, same card, unaltered. Like I said, Naga, not the recipients of the major changes. Neither is, as we have here, Undead. Undead loses the null 1/4 that scaled 1 attack for each minion that died. Instead, we have the incorporeal corporal. That's a mouthful. 1-star 5/5. After this minion attacks, destroy it. Very reminiscent of the bubble back in the day that used to die if it takes 1 damage instance. A giant weakness on a minion that is way overstated. Kind of the concept here is you're just going to put this thing last position, leave it on your board, hope people attack into it, it gets better stats. Ties a lot of rounds early, loses to like Micro Mummy on a 50-50. Still a decent card, better than buying up garbage. Not as good as getting economy most of the time. Okay, it's a 1-star. Let's not overanalyze a mediocre 1-star. Pretty much everything else up until the end of this row is the same card as before. Radio Star. First of all, props, designers, for a fun little reference. Our Undead Radio Star over here. Death Rattle, add a plain copy of the minion that killed this to your hand. Holy shit! That's a good card. 3-star 3/1, obviously a little lackluster. Remember, Warden of Old was a busted card at add a coin to your hand. Very, very, very strong early game 3-star. Radio Star adds a full minion to your hand, let alone the coin. It can just act as a coin, or you can keep the body on the board. That's nuts. Outside of that, we have the new Xylobones. After you summon a minion in combat, gain 3 health permanently. Oh my god, is that Terracosa? It gets stats in combat and keeps them? It's beautiful. Actually, a lot of scaling, right? You play a lot of Death Rattles on these kind of boards. You get a bunch of Death Rattle minions, and you get like a 5/7 the first turn. Maybe the next turn it's a 5/16. Can't really scoff at a minion that's scaling that heavily in the middle of the game. Problem is, it's just scaling health. Build your own Battlemaster, basically. You're going to need that a noob scaling. You're going to need some way of getting more attack on it. Otherwise, this is just a kind of mediocre mid-game minion that doesn't facilitate anything for late game. Still a very viable card, even if you only have 1 or 2 Death Rattles on the board. We went over this one before. The Plague Tidewalker is a dual tribe Undead Murloc, the new one. The ability to potentially reborn this to use 2 venomous procs. Very tempting for late game tech cards. You can use a bumper, like use a combination of like Soul Splitter plus Tidewalker. Very similar to what we talked about before with how we used to use Toxfin plus Murkai to create 2 poisons. You could have Soul Splitter plus Tidewalker is basically 2 poisons as well. Interesting late game pivot tech. Whoops. I clicked on the bottom. It's my fault. And last but not least, actually, wait, that is it for Undead, isn't it? I thought there was one more. Like I said, Undead not really changing too heavily. Did I miss something? Nah, that's it. All right, moving on. Undead was just added, guys, like 3.5 months ago. We don't need to overhaul the tribe that was just added to the game. We'll leave that for the tribes that have been around forever, that were desperately attached to 1 card. And we could hold a candlelight vigil here for a second for our boy Hoggarr. Because as we will scroll, you will notice that no 5-star is named Hoggarr. He's gone. No more Hoggarr chat. F's in chat for Hoggarr. We gotta have a new way to play, because pirates were pretty one-dimensional after they gutted Khadgar, Eliza, Exodia pirates. We basically had one way to play pirates for the last 4 months. That was hit Hoggarr, Greta, go for APM. No Greta, no Hoggarr. New day, new pirates. Let's figure out if there's a way to make this work. First glance, pirates feels underwhelming. The new cards are very hard to synergize, and they're all greed. But wait, there's more. The 4-stars. The 4-stars are solid, and pairs of cards working well together is kind of interesting for this game. Yeah, it might not be a full pirate comp, but we may be able to piece together stuff, especially like dual tribe menagerie comps that work really well with a couple pirate minions. First of all, let's go over the new cards. Salsea Busker. Battlecry, gain 1 gold next turn. It's kind of like the old Swabby, but instead of getting the gold discount on your tavern tier, you now get the gold added to your gold pool next turn. Awkward, you may have to hold it on turn 1 instead of level it if you want to level on turn 2. really it's not a very playable turn 1 card. Having 5 gold on turn 2 doesn't do you any favors. So like buying up the card, holding it, next turn leveling, playing the busker, then you can double buy on 2 or go straight to 3. Very nice economy card. You're just going to have to lose some rounds for it. All the same, all the same, all the same, all the same. Gunpowder Courier. 3-star, 2/4. After you spend 5 gold, give your pirates 1 attack. There you go. That's it. Do we need to go over this too much in depth? It's a way of getting attack on all of the pirates on your board. Then again, why do I want attack on a bunch of these pirates on the board? Am I going to have a bunch of like, oh, Thorn Captains and Buskers and whatever? Seems hard to play a 3-star to scale a bunch of minions. Maybe later once we have an established pirate board. I forgot to mention, Ripsnarl moved from Tavern 4 to Tavern 2. Drops down to a 2/4 stat line. Loses the health on attack. Whenever a friendly pirate attacks, give it 3 attack. It doesn't say other friendly pirate for what it's worth. Now, whenever a friendly pirate attacks, give it 3 attack. It's effectively, however many pirates plus 3 buffs, 3 attack buffs, and itself is like, 5/4 body. If it, if it can get it, if it can attack and not get sniped, which ain't bad, but really just nothing to write home about out of these early pirate minions. None of them are like super exciting. Gambler's always a good card. Corpse Refiner's not really a pirate card. It's more of a menagerie card. Gunpowder Courier, potentially a lot of value if you get a bunch of gold. But you're going to need a way to scale the board. You're going to need a way to play into direction with this comp. So far, nothing. Bloodsoul Cannoneer returns. This used to be a card that was in the game for a long time. Battlecry give you other pirates 3 attack. Basically big attack scaling on the board. We can see that pirates right now are very, very attack heavy. But what else? Now we get into the interesting ones. Underhanded Dealer. Now this is an interesting card. My first reaction to it was, hey, look, it's Magmaloc. After you gain a gold, gain 1/1. You might be thinking, Bofur, you don't gain a lot of gold in this game. Are you thinking you're going to play Busker? You can gain some extra gold there? Well, you gain gold at the beginning of the turn, right? You gain 10 gold at the beginning of the turn. You get a 10/10 buff every turn. Kidding. You get 1 instance of a gold gain to the beginning of the turn. Can you imagine how good that would be? Underhanded Dealer, every turn starts, gains 10 gold, 10/10 buff, easy clap. Now, but it does gain a 1/1 passively every turn. But also every time you sell a minion, you gain a gold. So just like Magmaloc, where you buy something and sell it, Underhanded Dealer, you buy something and sell it, and you gain a 1/1 buff. You can see how this starts to get pretty good. Magmaloc is good because it synergizes with cards like Master Realities, it synergizes with cards like Bran with Discovers with Primal Fin. How do we enable Underhanded Dealer to work in a way that is similar to Magmaloc? Given it's a 4-star, it's more accessible, but it doesn't have as many enabling features. But what about Peggy? Peggy's a good card. Now you have 2 cards every time you buy and sell something that generate a 1/1 buff. Now we can build one giant thing that's scaling at 2/2 when you have the Peggy on the board. What about this card right here? The Lovesick Balladist. Battlecry, give a pirate 1 health for every gold you spend this turn. So typically that should be a minimum of an 8 health buff and a maximum in the range of like a 12 health buff each time you find one. That's pretty good, especially when you're building a big minion here. We can just build one big dummy, keeping a Peggy on the board, an Underhanded Dealer, playing the game like normal, doing whatever with the other 5 slots on the board. And every time you see one of these guys, hey, look, 10 extra health. That's a lot of mid-game power. Is the rest of the tribe great? Not really. But those cards together are actually really, really, really solid, and they don't take up a lot of real estate on your board. You could be playing a pseudo undead board. You could be playing mechs. You could be keeping a Mama Bear and Death Rattle Beasts. And you're using 4 slots for your core comp, and you just have Peggy and Underhanded Dealer here that are just passively getting bigger on the board. Remember, we're not playing buddy meta. New meta is going to be slower, and this is a consistent way to get stats in the middle of the game. God forbid you start getting pairs on them or extra minions, make some of them golden. That's a lot of stats. Blade Collector. If you look at this card and squint really hard, you'll see that if the tape, you like just tear off the name Blade Collector, it says Cave Hydra underneath. But Cave Hydra was retired to the Great Farm in the sky. He cleaved too many corners, and I threatened him each time he was going to go to the farm. He is now officially retired to the farm as of Tuesday. Blade Collector takes his place. It's a cleave, and it's on pirates. Note that Beast lost their cleave. No Cave Hydra anymore. Just moved it over to a different tribe. Once again, let's have the conversation. This card sucks by itself. We don't have a way of getting this thing to be massively big. Yeah. We could cycle a billion things and have this vanilla minion on the board and a Bloodsail Captain, and we could Cannoneer, and we can get some attack scaling. Or you could just find a Peggy. This card right here, when the game slows down, gets to be so much better because you have more relevant turns with that amount of stats mattering. Just find a Peggy and have the only other pirate on the board as a Blade Collector. And once again, you can play a 4 to 5 minion composition where you're cycling cards and you're passively building a big cleave in the process. Feels like pirates, they want to have an identity, and I think they kind of mess with the later cards, and I know I'm kind of preemptively cutting off what their good, like their top tier cards are. But these four 4-stars together are very, very, very solid cards. They all work together. They either build big cleave or gigantic minion, tons of health, stats passively with Peggy, at very, 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 very small commitment in terms of gold and board space. Hey, look, it's Vanessa. She hasn't changed. I mean, she's a 3/7. Vanessa. But, yeah, she just tempo, right? When you get pirates on the board and you find Vanessa, you can just go for the throat and try to kill people before you die. But what are we doing instead of Hoggarr now? Instead, we have Record Smuggler. At the start of your turn, gain 1 gold. Repeat for every friendly pirate. So synergies to think of. Number 1, we get an extra like 6 gold a turn if you have a pirate board. Number 2, you get, or 7 gold, I guess, if you have an entirely pirate board. You get individual buffs for the underhanded dealer. So you get a bunch of extra procs there. Kind of like Gold Grubber scaling. If you could get Golden Record Smuggler, you can get 2 gold. Repeat it for each friendly pirate. Well, that's like 24 gold for next turn. That's not exactly something to scoff at. God forbid you start getting extra minions and start stacking this stuff on the board. You're getting passive scaling. You're getting premium minions potentially with the cleave. On top of that, you're getting scaling off of the Peggy. And you're getting 20, 30, 40 gold when you start stacking Record Smugglers on the board. It's not APM Pirates where you go actually infinite, but getting 30 plus gold turns is going to be an achievable line for Pirates. The tough part, though, is that they're just vanilla minions. You can make a bunch of big dummies, but if you don't get good effects on the board, you better hope that they don't play any tech cards, or, more likely than not, you do exactly what we just described here, which is you have Peggies and underhanded dealers and such on the board, maybe some Blade Collectors. You're cycling, you're getting Balladists, you're getting some health on these guys, you triple them in the mid game, you take up like 3-ish spots on the board, and then you dump all of these tech cards that are enabling it and put Mantids and Leroys and stuff on the board. Because realistically, making a bunch of big dummies doesn't win games, but making a bunch of big dummies is basically what Theotar did really well last patch. And that's good enough to be able to give you a direction and give you enough time to be able to find tech cards to win the game. So we'll see. We'll see how it works. There's still Selfless, there's still Baron. Maybe there's not an abundance of poison to the point with the new Venomous that we can't counterplay that. And we get a decent level of performance out of big dummies. That's all they are inherently, is just big stats. Upbeat Impressionist we went over before. Basically turn minions golden every 2 turns in your hand. Pirates, that is. And finally, Fleet Admiral Tethys, the new 6-star. After you spend 8 gold, get another random pirate. So basically, another way to facilitate playing more minions through. You gain gold off of the minion that you sell. You can potentially create triples off of it. Having a ton of gold with Smuggler means that you generate more and more pirates. Like if you have 30 gold to start the turn, this guy's going to print 425 or 324, 425 extra pirates in that turn that then just give you more gold. You see where it's going. They all stack upon each other, but they leave a little something to be desired. All right, that's the big one. Pirates is definitely one of the bigger changes. I miss Hoggarr already, but it'll be interesting to play the new stuff. All right. Demons. Demons just fully embrace self-harm. You hate to see it, dude. You hate to see it. Wrathweaver got buffed, as we jokingly said during stream. Is now a 1/4 baseline body, and since you never play demons with Wrathweaver anyway, the only time you buy it if you're gonna just sell it back when you level to 2-on-2 and then just go, you know, double buy on 3. Now it's a 1/4 instead of a 1/3 for that purpose. Nah. The reason they reduced the scaling on the Wrathweaver from a 2/2 to a 2/1 is because there's gonna be a reason to play Wrathweaver now. Take a look at our new 2-stars. Soul Rewinder. After a hero takes damage, rewind it and give this +1 health. Assuming that rewind means restore the health, because rewind isn't inherently a very descriptive term here. Every time you play a buff or a demon with a Wrathweaver on the board, you get a 2/1 for free. You also get to deal 1 damage to yourself, which has later ramifications for scaling as well. Soul Rewinder is demons. This card right here feels really weird to me. It feels like the entire tribe is built on this self-harm mechanic. And now you're going to be reliant on finding a single 2-star to even be able to play the tribe. That's an awkward idea. Because sure, I could find it and then I can play toward it. Or you just don't play demons. Those are the 2 options. You can't just be like, oh, we got other cards that kind of enable demons a little bit. We'll see. You can kind of still play old school or Zool or something like that. But it's way better if you can find a Soul Rewinder. Backstage Security, overstated 2-star, 4/6 body at the start of your turn, deal 1 damage to your hero. So basically, if you don't have the Soul Rewinder, you're going to start whittling yourself down. But hey, if you don't lose a round, instead win a round or tie a round, where you would have lost before, the 1 health is worth it. So you can see this thing being picked up no matter what in certain places. Fellhound, obviously going to be super good if you have Soul Rewinder because it's free. No more Kathy in the game, so no way of making your hero immune. Soul Rewinder or bust. Keyboard Igniter, if you've taken damage since the last turn, self-harm, give your other demons +1, too. I smacked myself in the face with my boom. My pop filter over here. Yeah, you see the trend. Deal damage to self, buff minions. Legion Overseer and Elemental stay the same. Hey look, another card. Malchezaar, Prince of the Dance. 2 refreshes each turn cost health instead of gold. So just find the card or whittle yourself down and die. Don't play the demons, you better have this card. Battlemaster, obviously, same as it was. Ring Matron, same as it was. Urzul, same as it was. New card, Imposing Percussionist. Battlecry, discover a demon, deal damage to your hero equal to its tier. Find the 2-star or die. That's what it feels like. Like every one of these cards that you want to play needs this to exist, or you're just going to go from 30 to 0 instantly. And last but not least, Tychondrius, who, once again, built on the same mechanic. After your hero takes damage, give your other demons +1/1. Deal damage to self, get stats. Other little tiny things to note. Fell Stomper still exists in the game. We love Death Rattles and Fell Stomper boards. Obviously ways to play with demons. And Fellbat no longer buffs itself. At the end of your turn, your other demons consume a minion in the tavern to gain its stats. No longer is Fellbat going to be, by itself, an absurdly good card to hit. You're going to need demons to enable it. Kind of makes for a more interesting card, in my opinion, because you're going to have to sell it in the middle of the game and not keep it forever. And Fellbat was the single highest play impact 6-star prior to Buddy Meta. And in Buddy Meta, it is the second highest play impact card. Or 6-star, I should say, on early turns. The only one that beats it is Theotar. Theotar, removed from the game. Fellbat nerfed. Opens up space for new comps, right? All right, what do we have left? We have Quillboar. I know we have Mech. Those are our big ones. They are 2 very, very, very cool redesigns. Quillboar are getting the ability to make your blood gems more potent. Couple small changes to get into here. Thorncaller moves down the Tavern 2, but it's just a Death Rattle instead of a Battlecry and Death Rattle. I guess we just jump into it immediately. Moon Bacon Jazzer. Battle Cry. For the rest of your game, your Battle Cry or your Blood Gems give an extra health. That's a Battle Cry unit. You can play that a lot of times in a game. Find 3, 4, 5 Moonbacon Jazzers, and suddenly those Blood Gems are giving 1/4, 1/5, 1/6. Likewise, Prickly Piper down here. Death Rattle. For the rest of your game, your Blood Gems give an extra attack. Keep that thing on your board for a few turns. It goes from 2, 3, 4, 5 extra attack every time you play a Blood Gem. Scale the Blood Gems in the early portion of the game. Find ways of putting a bunch of Blood Gems on the board in the later portions of the game. Simple game plan for a simple tribe. But that's a lot more stats. Play in the Bristle Mains. Get yourself some Jib Smuggler. Smuggler looks a lot better now when you look at this card. And you're like, oh yeah, 1/1 to all the Quillboar. That's not very exciting. Well, if it's 4/4 to all the Quillboar, that sure as hell looks a lot more exciting. Still have the Duo synergy. Still have the Agam synergy. Still have the Pufferquill synergy to play toward, Venomous, even though it isn't permanent poison. Our new card, Bongo Bopper, generates a Blood Gem. Also plays 2 on itself every turn. So if these guys are, buffed up, those Blood Gems like a 4/4, this guy's going to be over there giving himself an 8/8 buff and generating a Blood Gem for an extra 4/4 in your hand. It's a lot of scaling. Find these guys early, commit the Quillboar. Going to be kind of an interesting tribe. On top of that, Bristleback Knight still exists for a premium late game minion. Charlie no longer buffs himself or herself, but now scales with all of those buffs as well. So Charlie at the end of the turn can buff 6 minions. 6 minions that could get, 4/4 buffs. A lot better than Charlie was in the past. Last but not least is Bristleback. I will concede that people in chat did make a good point, that we haven't had exactly this kind of mechanic exist in the game before. There is a pretty split opinion amongst my chat about 60-40 or 65-35 on whether they think that this Blood Gem is permanent on minions or will be removed at the end of combat. I personally fall into the side of any buff that is applied in combat is removed at the end of the combat, unless explicitly stated otherwise. The case that is being made is that Blood Gems are a new mechanic. They are a spell that's being applied rather than a buff, like a plus XX stat, whatever, being applied to a unit. And there isn't precedent for that. I'd make an argument that this should work in the same way that like a Divine Shield spell or whatnot would work. But that being said, until we have clarification from the devs, we don't know 100% one way or another on this. Regardless, Bristleback, 6-star 2/10. Every time a minion dies on your board, avenge 1. Play Blood Gem on all of your Quillboar. Kind of like Fell Stomper for Quillboar, right? Your minions die instead of, minions spawn. Quillboar get a big buff off of the Bristleback. The bigger that you've made that buff from the Prickly Piper, from the, where he went, Moonbacon Jazzer, the bigger those buffs are happening over and over again. It's either permanent and very, 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 very strong, or it's temporary and very tempo-oriented, but not really a super scalar kind of 6-star. We shall see. The Quillboar definitely look interesting, and the ramifications of playing part of a Quillboar comp and being able to play multiple other things with it, kind of like when we talked about with pirates. You could see yourself with like a pseudo Agam pirate board with Blood Gem scaling, and then you could get like Charlie and all those kind of things as well on top of that. Could make for a pretty interesting menagerie kind of line. Either way, very interested to play Quillboar. And last but not least, okay, out of tribes, Mechs. Mechs OP. This is such a cool new mechanic. Mechs are getting like magnetic synergies all over the place. Take a look at Lullabot over here. 2-star magnetic, at the end of your turn, gain 1/1. So you basically make a permanently scaling minion in the form of just, put the Lullabot on a Puppbot. Puppbot keeps getting bigger. Well, Bofur, that's not that great. 1/1 isn't that many stats. It's only like 10-10 over 10 turns. It's not the thing that breaks the game. It's the mechanic in general. How about a Quartertron? A 3-star. 2/3. At the start of your turn, gain an extra gold. All right. Now I see what you're talking about a little bit. Now that magnetic minion that I kept on the board, because it's only taking 1 spot, is gaining stats passively each turn and now is generating more gold every turn as well? And what did I have to do to enable this, Mr. Bofur? All you got to do is have a mech on the board. Every time you find this shit, just throw it on the same mech. We don't have to be a full mech composition. We can just have the minion on the board, get bigger, generate gold, and continue to synergize with these guys. How about Scrapper? Avenge 4. Every time you avenge 4 minions die in front of it, get a random magnetic. Could be modules. Could be Lullabots. Could be extra gold per turn. Could be, what is this? Replicating Menace. And it could be War Gear. Continue the synergy. Utility Drone. Whenever your end of turn effects trigger, or at the end of turn, you gain a 1/1 for every magnetic on a minion. So just generate more magnetics, put them on minion you're keeping, get scaling off Utility Drone as well. We're talking about like a 3 or 2 card combo on the board that is enabling all of this. And this is where, you know, why I prefaced like the Pirates idea with, you can play that composition with the 4-star Pirates and not commit 7 slots on the board for Pirates. You can also do this stuff here and not be a full mech board. You could easily be part pirate, part mech, taking advantage of all the minions that you're selling, all of the extra buffs from the Peggy, taking extra minions that are being spawned off of these guys, getting yourself extra gold there, whether you attach them or just sell them. Then in turn, only utilizing 1 or 2 slots from the mech and 1 or 2 slots from the pirates. Shit, man, you could put a Fell Stomper and a Death Rattle around that. You could play Baron Selfless. You can do all kinds of shit because you have open board spaces. It's not like you're committing the entire board. I need all of these slots to synergize to make this happen. On top of that, we got a couple ones later. Polarizing Beatboxer is basically a multiplier to that strat. Whenever you magnetize another minion, it also magnetizes this minion. So like double the magnetic effects. I will say that this guy I think is super optimistic. What we just described as the way to play mechs requires you to like commit 1 card to board. Everybody in their right mind is going to be buying up those magnetics in the mid game. By the time you're getting a polarizing Beatboxer on the board, the only magnetics you're going to find are going to have to be generated off of this guy. Because you're sure as hell not going to find a bunch of magnetics still existing in the shop. Because people are just going to buy them and keep them on their board. It costs so little. It's 1 board spot. Just keep the 1 board spot. You can put it on a pup bot. You can put it on whatever. Just keep that 1 board spot. Or, better yet, for every other tribe, you can just put it on Mistake over here. My God. At least they aptly named this card. We have a 1-star amalgam all tribe that exists in the game now. It is named Mistake. You can't blame them. They knew it was coming. Is it completely busted? Probably not, but still pretty good. The ability to benefit from basically any buff that you see over the course of the middle of the game. The fact that it's just a 1/3 body isn't the end of the world either. Just a good card. You can make Divine Shields. Note that we don't have Toxfin anymore, or any way to apply poison. So like Divine Shield poison across the board with a bunch of mistakes isn't going to be a common board state. Still, giant Divine Shield minions, oftentimes very good. Other cards to note out of this, out of the neutrals. These are all the neutral cards, by the way. Upbeat Duo. We had a long discussion on this one during the live patch review. Because what does Upbeat Duo? Okay, well, let's first of all read it. 4-star 4/2 Battlecry. Choose a minion at the end of every 2 turns. Give you a plain copy of that minion. Excuse me. What does this do when you triple it? What does this do with Jandas? Can we target more than 1 minion? Take the triple example. I find an Upbeat Duo. I use it on a Fireworks Fanatic. Remember, you can target shop. You don't have to target friendly. I find another Upbeat Duo. I use it on a Vigilant Stoneboard. Both of those things should be generating copy every 2 turns. Now I triple it, and I get to target something else with its battle cry. Am I generating all 3 of those minions? What is the golden text on this thing? Is it every turn instead of every 2 turns? We really don't know. What happens if I'm Jandas and I just take this thing in the middle of the game and I target something in shop, I swap, and I target another thing in shop? And then I swap and I target another thing and shop. And then I swap and I target another thing. Am I printing all of these minions every 2 turns? This could get out of hand real quick, especially once it's golden. You could have like 7 things, 8 things targeted and print 1 copy of each of them every single turn. God forbid it's the same minion and you're just printing triples on triples on triples. And then, you know, obviously we just extend this out to the memes. What if one of the cards that I swap into is also the upbeat duo? Can I generate more copies of my own duos that then generate more copies of my own duos? Can I have a board that prints 10 cards in hand that's 3 times triples? Or more? Per turn? Now, obviously it's a neutral. You're just gonna die. But man, you can make funny things happen. Now we gotta go even further. Go further down the rabbit hole. That's an end of turn effect, right? This one's been theory crafted for a long time. Dracarian Chanter. Your end of turn effects trigger twice. So now we can get it to happen more times. Like, you can just see the memes. The cogs are turning. Can I print a handful of golden minions every turn because of Dracarian Chanters on top of a bunch of swapped or whatever versions of upbeat duo? Just print all the minions to hand over and over and over again? Can I just make a board full of 6 stars because I duplicate into a billion forts and then I can just taunt up my shit that are all neutrals and then have all of them get scaling from the forts and the Dracarian Chanter? Enchanter, super situational. This card, especially prior to fort being added to the game, not a lot of cards synergize very well with this. You got Murlocs, you got, you know, Light Fang, you got Firebat, and Firebat's a little more interesting now that, you know, the Firebat itself doesn't eat the board, but you can only eat so many minions in the shop. So doubling into turn effects just makes it so you don't have to have as many demons on the board to get full scaling. But fort added to the game does actually make Dracarian Chanter somewhat interesting. A way to take extra like 16 a turn is a non-negligible amount of stats. Don't know. Should be interesting. We'll figure it out. I think Dracarian Chanter has some fun place in the game. Might make for some fun meme boards. But overall is going to be a dead card most of the time you see it. Last but not least, I am interested to hear what people think about this one though. I think there's a lot of ways that this can be abused in some funny late game meme comp scenarios. And you know me. I love my meme comps. We're going to find a way to abuse this. Last but not least, the Boogie Monster returns. Now with a hat and doing a boogie. Replacing Theotar. A 6-star that has the ability to buff the board plus 1/2 on every minion each time you play a tier 1 minion. Once you play the tier 1 minion, it upgrades what we assume is the tier 2. Then tier 3, then tier 4, then tier 5. So you're going to be doing what is the boogie that they're trying to do is the flavor text here. To play a 1-star, then a 2-star, then a 3-star, then a 4-star in order to take the buff after buff after buff after buff. Big question is, does it reset back to 1 after Tavern 6? Because we don't have clarification on any of this. All I can say is, I think so. That would be my guess. Who knows? But that's a lot of stats. This is like 1.5 times the scaling of Theotar for every minion that you're playing. That being said, you are buffing 6 minions. 6 minions where in the late portions of the game, you're oftentimes going to want to play tech cards where those are anyway. One of the big advantages of Theotar was that you buffed only the minions you kept on the board. You concentrated the stats on 3 things. You then could collect things like Manted, like Leroy, like Selfless, like Baron, like whatever. And take those things to the end of the game, swap out the Theotars, have a finished comp, 3 big dudes, and then like all the tech cards in the world. Boogie Monster distributes the stats across a bunch of things. Yeah, sure, you can still sell some of them to put tech cards on the board. But it'd be a lot nicer if the stats were all consolidated on the same minions that you keep. Just a thought. It's probably going to be a little bit situational. But in all cases, a very playable card. Situational in the sense that, like, being better or worse than Theotar, I should say. But almost universally a playable card on Tavern 6. Alright, that's it. That's the patch review. It was only like an hour and change. That wasn't that bad. Considering that I did 5.5 hours or 5 hours as the patch review on stream today. I stopped the stream and I just did this consolidated review. That was record breaking fast for me. An hour for a patch review. Let's go. All right. Hopefully you guys all enjoy the patch. We're going to have a playtest, as we stated at the beginning of this, on, let's bring that up, on Thursday at this time right here. And if you guys are around and want to watch some of the fun new cards being played for that brief 5-hour window, feel free to pop over to the Twitch channel. I'll be playing there. Love to interact with people during the event. Should be a great time. All right, everybody. Take care. Have a great night. I'll see you around. Peace.